I'm Glenn Athy. In this episode, we're going to look at the Labour Party's recent 2024 general election manifesto. We're going to discuss some of the implications for local and regional economies in the UK. Before we go into it, we want to look at some, how bad is the UK regional economic problem? I mean, and another podcast I highlighted this, in 2012, no UK region performed worse than a former East German state or lander for GVA per worker. We fast forward to 2020, we see 8 out of 12 UK regions, their GVA per worker is less than the lowest performing East German state or lander. So what a transition, in the past 10 years. And it shows there are serious regional economic problems in the UK. And again, if we look at the local level, GVA per head, by district and unitary authorities, we see massive variations there, from £16,000 to £40,000. The 9 million number is really the City of London, which is an outlier. And we can see the major challenges that the UK government faces in public expenditure and taxation. Total public expenditure remains high, and the tax take from the economy is at its highest level since the late 1960s. Yet, there's been a deterioration in public services. There's a £37 billion gap in public investment in infrastructure, capital and equipment. We can see this grey area here that the UK has really been running a budget deficit for many years now. Conclude by looking at some mistakes of the past 30 or 40 years in local and regional economic policy. First off, there's been no vision or objectives for the national economy or national policies in the past 15 years. National policies for the economy, transport, climate change, education, skills, science, innovation, planning, place, they don't join up. And at the local and regional level, at a place-based level, you'd need them to join up. And there's been a mistake of creating new institutions and agencies without clear objectives, without actually articulating why and what they're for. And there's been a lack of investment. There's been a lot of building up of local economic initiatives, but really the finances invested in it are tiny and would not make a difference. It's a long-term challenge. It's a 30-year project to address some of the local and regional economic disparities, to address poverty, cost of living crisis, low skills. A 3-year programming budget is insufficient. And we know local government is accountable, has good assurance of finance controls. So why does central government keep imposing new controls for each different grant funder programme? Also, there's no capacity building, and that needs to be addressed. So I think going forward, what we need for effective levelling up our local or regional economic policy is a clear objectives over the long term, a bias towards delivery. The first 100 days of levelling up for a new government should be about delivering for the next 4 years. Significant challenges also need bold responses. We can't keep going on with we do the same, we get the same. We need to step up and improve. And we need to break out of the funding and policy regime, which is dominated by the electoral cycle. We need 30-year programs and structures, not 5-year ones. And we need to put local and regional impact appraisal at the heart of Whitehall's decision-making and policy process. Many decisions are made without any analysis of the local and regional implications. And it's obvious that devolution provides an opportunity to address levelling up and local and regional economic disparities. Why not have a menu of policies, powers, tools, and resources instead of these piecemeal deals that are organised for each geography? Makes no sense. Finally, invest in and develop the community of practice and encourage policy experimentation. Here we're going to go on to my review and reactions to the Labour Party Manifesto. 5 missions in the Labour Party Manifesto, and they've already been trailed in the past month in the build-up to the election. Number 1 is economic growth. Number 2 is to become a clean energy superpower. And number 3 is crime. Number 4 is to break down barriers to opportunity. And number 5 is to restore NHS services. So when I read through the manifesto, some of the key policies that stood out to me from my initial read and are of relevance to urban and local economies are as follows. 1 is economic growth and stability. underpinned by a new national industrial strategy and a new partnership with business and a new £7.3 billion national wealth, a stable business environment, and a stable tax environment. So, what's my reaction to this? Well, I think to pay for better public services, defence, criminal law, social welfare, and local and regional economic development, um, you're either going to have to tax more or have high rates of economic growth to, raise the taxable amount in the economy. So the Labour Party's claimed it's not going to raise taxes or change tax rates. It's gambling on economic growth. Um, and I think, from my point of view, stability is welcome after COVID-19, the Ukraine war, and Brexit. But on its own, it doesn't sound enough to stimulate growth. Stability isn't a growth policy. It doesn't drive demand. What the Labour Party have suggested so far is very much a supply side approach to growth, which on its own isn't going to be enough. But I think to some extent the big ideas around growth are difficult to communicate in elections and in manifestos because there's usually some spending involved, such as capital spending or continuing to push R&D spend, or even trade policy or customs policy with the European Union, for example. It's an area that the Labour Party don't want to go down during the run up to the election. So, moving on, there's another paragraph about enhanced devolution powers in existing combined authorities and further areas, and the statutory requirements for local growth plans that link towns and cities, and that these are aligned with a national industrial strategy. My reaction is that enhanced devolution powers have got to be welcome. And it's long been apparent that there's some kind of local economic strategy or growth plan is necessary, to unlock funding for local growth, to prioritise spend. There's not much detail what shape or form this local growth plan will take. But I think, it's a bit, there's no idea of the amount of money involved. Will it be £30 billion per year as spent on German reunification? We don't know. But I see some big challenges as to actually, for a local authority, local combined authority, develop a plan, identify needs and opportunities, the concepts, what's the best options for delivering growth, and then designing growth plans and delivery programs. This involves scaling up really what they've been doing over the past 10 to 15 years, particularly in terms of capability and capacity, which has been a low ebb and which has been deteriorated by austerity and cuts in public spending. We need great ideas, plans. We need the delivery capacity and capability to drive local economic growth and prosperity. Devolution on its own doesn't solve this. It just provides the mechanism to enable. There's a long way to go. Another point from the manifesto is the recognition of significant funding pressures on local authorities and a proposal to have a multi-year funding settlement for local government. It's great. This is welcome. It's difficult to see much headroom in the public finances to actually restore local government funding to, say, 2010-11 levels. So I think we'll have to see what happens. The next kind of part of the manifesto relates to a big push on workforce training, particularly to address skills and labour shortages, particularly to look at some of these shortages that have emerged from Brexit and due to the immigration policy and seeing if we can fill them by training UK citizens and residents. So it looks like there's going to be a restored youth guarantee for 18 to 21-year-olds. And now there's a proposal to merge Job Centre Plus in the National Careers Service to become the National Jobs Service and Careers Service. And there's a commitment to reform and improve the apprenticeship levy. My reaction is, I've written previously about the missed opportunity of increasing education and training provision for skills shortage occupations that have resulted from Brexit and tighter immigration control. So this is welcome. Any measures to improve apprenticeship take-up is welcome. Apprenticeships have decreased by 1/3 since the introduction of the apprenticeship levy in 2017. I'm not sure about the merging of the Job Centre with the National Career Service. They seem like two different service streams. It's a serious, be successful would involve some fundamental reassessment of what they're for and how they're delivered. The next item in the manifesto is a new deal for working people, improving working conditions, reducing discrimination, removing age bands from minimum wages, the creation of Skills England to bring together business training providers and unions with national local government to ensure highly trained workforce needed to deliver Labour's industrial strategy. My reaction is that, it's great to push to upskill and better coordinate the skill system. Um, you know, the proposal for Skills England looks a bit like the old UK Commission for Employment and Skills, which was very good, but it was really a research policy development organisation. It was eventually abolished by the Conservative government. Its influence wasn't really that influential from 2011 onwards. These kind of initiatives are only useful if ministers actually take notice of them and are committed to them. And sometimes that can be difficult because the messages they give can be hard to deal with in policy terms. They might involve significant change in investment. So we'll see what happens with that one. Another part of the manifesto is to create 650,000 green jobs by 2030, with an emphasis on local energy generation. My reaction is it's great to have a push on green jobs and climate change. 650,000 new green jobs is very ambitious. I don't think it's achievable. Be lucky to achieve half of that. But what I do like about the manifesto is quite practical. Recognition that a lot of these jobs may be in retrofit and things like renewable energy installation. And there's also a focus on innovation in green industries, which is very welcome. And finally, there's the ambition to build 1.5 million new homes and a return to mandatory housing targets for local planning authorities, with an emphasis on social housing and affordability. And there's also mention about selectively removing parts of the green belt for housing development. My reaction to this is that new homes would be welcome, and they're much needed. Housing cost and availability is a significant constraint on local growth and development, and things like labour supply and skills. To me, if it's about affordability, I think, and about delivering rapidly, it's probably going to be public and social housing instruments, not private sector housing, because it's the only way to make rapid progress on affordable housing. In terms of the green belt, the debate I followed over the years, some parts of the green belt obviously need protected. Other parts really have little habitat value. They're more of a barrier, that's outside a large urban settlement. Whereas other areas that have high habitat value are not protected. So I think some sensible, transparent system, that is well regulated, and it seems sensible to address this. I think having five main objectives is very welcome. This is kickstart economic growth, make Britain a clean energy superpower, take back our streets, break down barriers to opportunity, and build on the NHS fit for the future. I think it's great to have some clear objectives for policy, public expenditure, and the energies of government to follow. It's been missing for the past 15 years, and I'm pleased to have that. We need to focus to deliver change, and that's great. In terms of kickstarting economic growth, I think it's good to have that focus. To share wealth out, we have to build wealth, and I just hope that we have an inclusive approach to growth where everybody benefits. And also, I just think the supply side initiatives identified in the manifesto aren't enough to stimulate growth. We need demand side initiatives such as innovation, trade, and entrepreneurship. In terms of devolution, I think it's a central plank of the manifesto and it's welcome. And I think, there'll be a lot of progress there. Multi-year funding for councils is very welcome. Our local and regional economies, they face a long-term decline, some of them, and they can only be turned around with stable long-term policies. So multi-year funding settlements are essential. In terms of training, again, and workforce development, that's very welcome. I think an open goal was missed in Brexit by the previous government. They did absolutely nothing to prepare the workforce for skills and workforce gaps and shortages from Brexit and from the new immigration policy. Whereas we could have had a very active policy, which local people and UK residents could have benefited from. And making Britain a clean energy superpower, I'm a bit sceptical about the 650,000 jobs, although I do welcome the commitment and it seems very pragmatic and practical. In terms of the housing numbers, again, much needed in the UK. But I think sensibly, we're probably talking about public and social housing to get 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years.